All right, thank you. Ron, you want to get?
Be good? Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I know that Brandy Macchia will be a little bit late. She is planning on being here. I think other than that, we have everybody here, and there are no time constraints that I know of.
Thank you.
So Jill is on her way. I believe we will be missing Mario this evening. And our team has a 7 p.m. time constraint. Yeah.
7 p.m. time constraint. So we will end at 7 this evening instead of 7:30. Okay. With that, we left last week, and I believe TALC was going to do a survey about the 9 minutes. Were you able to accomplish that?
Did? Oh, you want the results?
Yeah, please.
Oh, I didn't know I had to share those.
Everybody's awaiting.
With bated breath, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we were pretty successful in our response. It included representation across all school levels, elementary, middle, high, and special instructional, but pretty much all years of experience. We asked a couple questions. We asked about the workday structure, and we asked about the meeting. So we asked about adding minutes to the workday. We gave 4 different scenarios, a status quo and a few others. And we asked about times of outside meetings. There was very strong support for the status quo option, where half of the folks that we surveyed said that the status quo option of not adding any more time to the workday was their most preferred option. When we started breaking down some of the days, we looked at an 8-hour day and 4 7.5 days. We looked at adding an hour to the week and having all 7 3/4-hour days. We looked at 2 8-hour days, 3 7.5, all different types of scenarios. And the one that was adding 9 minutes to the day was completely unacceptable at a rate of 43.06%.
Can you get a copy of that for legal? Add it here?
Maybe, I have just really notes here because it looked really bad in Excel with all the options that we gave. I can try to pare it down in some way.
Thank you, Kurt. All right,
We have a couple questions. And curious, was any way in the survey was presented, and I'm assuming that the option, or the offer, or the option for the additional 9 minutes was also presented with the 2% increase along with it?
It was presented as compensated for the work that they would be doing, yes.
But they're not aware that it's a 2% increase across the board?
I don't know that people see it that way.
A raise is more money for this, a raise is more money for the same amount of work, not more money for more work. So that's not a raise, even though you want to call it a raise because it's more money this year than it was last year. It is not more money for the same amount of work. So we don't consider that a raise. And TALC has honestly, in my 7 or 8 years, ever considered that idea a raise. That is compensation for staying at work longer. Sorry, I stole it from Kurt, but.
Kurt, did you need to finish your thought?
It was finished, thank you.
Okay. Rob, when you get the mic.
Just a few questions about the survey. How many people were surveyed?
I just have that about, what was it? We emailed membership. We don't survey non-members. I think it was about 1/3 of the bargaining unit, or I'm sorry, the membership responded.
A third of the membership, which is how many?
Over 1,000.
Okay. And can you give us an idea of how the questions were phrased?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have the survey up, I just have the results.
So I have to backtrack into it.
So we gave them 4 options. Do you want all the questions or just the pertinent ones?
There's only 4, right?
Well, I mean, we asked identifying information
Oh,
first.
no, we don't need that.
So we asked them to rank the proposed workday structure in order of preference. And we gave them the status quo option, one that added 9 minutes, the 45-minute a week option. We floated one that would have added an hour a week. And we've asked them, because it's not just 9 minutes a day, it's 7.5 hours versus 7.75 hours versus 8. So we gave different scenarios. 3 8-hour days, 2 7.5-hour days. 4 7.5 and 1 8-hour day. 5 7.75-hour days, that's the hour option. 3 7.5, 2 8-hour days. We were trying to see which one would be most amenable. And then we asked for comments, and the comments were all over the place from, under fair compensation, we already work outside contract every single day. Extending hours just means I'm giving it even more uncompensated work. We had family and personal life disruptions. Folks find much more value in the amount of time that they're able to spend with their family than working 9 minutes more, compensated and extending their day.
So where in there did it say with additional compensation?
I believe it was in the survey.
Go ahead, Anna.
So when you logged in to take the survey, the first thing it did, it gave you some identifying information like what level are you at, how many years in the district, how many years of education, and then when you went to the next screen of the survey, it says teacher workday proposals, any increase in work would be paid at your hourly rate. It says please rank the following proposed workday structures in order of preference, 1 through 4, and it was the hours Kerr just shared. And then for each option below, indicate how acceptable it would be to you. If you have selected unacceptable for any option, please share why. And then I'd have to answer this to go to the next screen to see what's next. But I do believe that it's the same format that then discusses mandatory meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. All right, anybody else have any questions or clarifications they need? All right.
Yeah, I do just have a couple comments in relation to that as well. And I'll go back to, again, kind of the interest that were presented at the beginning. And kind of just a reminder, when it comes down to the increased time, and I haven't been in the district that long, but I understand that there's been lots of conversations around that. And that has always been kind of discussed that, that's not that the staff is not willing to work additional time. In fact, they probably do work the additional time, but this would be an opportunity then for them to be additionally compensated for that time. And even in the options, if we go back through, one of those was a TALC presented option that in FY26 that we would add 9 additional minutes, and we even costed it out at $8.5 million. And so that's where we've got to at this point to, kind of again address all of the interests that were brought to the table. There were a couple interests that the district brought to the table in bargaining this time around. That we certainly were interested in increasing the workday. That was presented in the first option that we had. And we presented the option and the interest of increasing the starting salary to a point where the district felt that it was competitive, and that would have been the 54.5. And so I want to kind of steer back again that those are definitely the interests that were presented from the beginning. And I guess it was just an understanding at that point that it was communicated that TALC was more than willing to look at that as an option as long as there was compensation tied to it.
Kevin?
Yeah, I think, again, human being fallible, also not in the classroom, so lots of blind spots. Honestly, I was glad I took the survey, because like Kerr expressed before, when it first came up, kind of some unexpected pushback around the idea of it. And so the opinions of before were kind of based on the idea that maybe people would not have minded. But clearly, people do mind. And so when we go to the original interest, one of them is always ratifiability. That's gotta be one of them, right? And so, for whatever reason, and I have my own personal reasons, and I'm not gonna interject, but for whatever reason, the majority of the people who took the survey in the TALC bargaining unit won't even extend their day for money. I thought opposite, Kerr thought opposite, we thought compensation was the biggest stumbling block, but fallible human being makes mistakes and blind spots, because I have a little more control over my day than the other 5,996 people do in the bargaining unit, that, not even for money, apparently. So when we go back to the real original interest, which is ratifiability, I'm concerned that it has risks not ratified. And I'm also concerned that the attention to the base without appropriate attention to experienced teachers also risks ratification. I'm just gonna say that out loud.
Thank you. And at some point, after we get through this, I think we may be ready to continue to talk about that. And I don't know if you want to explore other options, but I'm certainly willing to take a look at something we are putting together based on what you just said, Kevin.
I am always interested in other options, so and I'm gonna hand it over to Shay.
Anna was next.
I didn't see that.
So, looking at our shared interests, we do have a shared interest of increasing the base salary for many reasons, such as recruitment and retention of our employees. However, if you look at option 1 of the TALC's proposal, that right there was $1,000 increase to all TALC employees. And with your option of, or the management side of 54.5, that does not provide an increase amongst all of our employees, when another one of our shared interests is compression. And I remember when we were discussing the pay bands back whenever that day was, and I asked the question about compression, and the answer was, this is going to create more compression for now. And so when we have a shared interest of compression, the district's proposal creates more compression. And those of us that were teachers in the district, when we raised our base up to 47.5, that created so much compression. There were teachers in our district that had been here for 10 years that were now making the exact same money of teachers they were mentoring. And that's not something I think that is, I just don't see how we could continue to create more compression when our teachers out here are struggling to make basic needs met. And so there has to be some plan that's somewhere in the middle of this where, if we raise it to 54.5 and everyone got that raise and then we talked about it, that's something I think we need to be a little hopefully we could be creative and come up with a plan. I think that's been kind of our intent along this way, but I know that's a hard pass with ratifiability when our teachers are just going to be making the same as brand new teachers again.
Okay, Shay?
I wanted to go back to something that Ron had said a few minutes ago about when TALC could put the option out to extend the day. One, that was done last school year, even though I know bargaining was carried over. And I think that, I know there's always been an interest to do that, especially when they wanted to add more minutes in the student day. But to do that now that school has already started, I think is much harder. People have second jobs that they've committed to. People have childcare that they've had to make arrangements for, especially with the change in the times that schools get out and start. So I think it's really hard to impose that, and there again, like Kevin said, get it ratified when we've already started. I don't think it's a bad idea, I just think it's a bad idea for this year.
Okay, thank you, Shay. Anybody else? All right. Ron, did you say you had something?
We're ready for another option.
Okay, let's go. By the way, we have 16 options at the moment.
So this is number 17.
Yes.
And again, you know, we typically put these together because, you know, we're not really interested in a la carte type items. So we're on option 17. This is kind of an Article 7/Article 10 part of this option. So number 1 would be, again, meeting the district interest, and I know you did your survey, but if you can, just take a look at the option, because I think some of this language may help with that, would be to increase the work week to 38.75 hours. Within that option, in FY26, we would continue with the 1 30-minute meeting per week. But to address all of the concerns and the issues, what we would propose for, this is FY26, so this is this year. So in FY26, this year, is to add the 9 additional minutes, but to use our current contract language in participatory decision-making to reconvene at the building level, all of the building level calendar committees, to have that discussion about what is the best option on how we introduce that per building for the rest of the year. And again, the cost for that 9 additional minutes would be 2%. So that would be kind of an Article 7/Article 10. But in addition to the 2% for the time, we are looking at, and I can explain this further, but just so we can get through the option, adding 4% towards compression. So we're looking at $16 million plus to address the compression issues that we have, and I will let Amy kind of present that here in a minute once we get through this. We would use an additional 1% to increase the base to 54.5. So that in total is a 7% Article 10 salary increase. I know it's, you know, again, not considered an additional raise, but as far as Article 10 is concerned, that is a 7% increase. Along with that, so in Article 10, we still are committed to raising the starting salary for all teachers to $54,500, and to raise the special instructional salary to a starting salary of $62,500. And just like in the last option in 10.02, we would propose again the same language to remove career ladder for FY27. Hold everybody harmless for anybody who's in the system up until that point, and then establish new metrics through committee work going into the next year. I know we have tabled the whole turnaround transition, but the language that we are proposing is to remove all language regarding district identified turnaround, and to keep within that article under turnaround and transition only the language that is required statutorily. So that would be regarding the BSI schools, and that $4,000 supplement that would go to all BSI schools for that current year that they're BSI and the following year. In 10.03, the same language, which would include the word, interjecting the word subject areas into 10.03. And then into 10.04, which was the same language, which we would include the 1 additional day during their contracted time for any coverage of a vacancy for all of our special instructional folks. We are also including in Article 12, the bereavement, parental leave, and elimination of the 10-year terminal pay requirement. Sorry, this is long, one more. In Article 7, we talked about this at the end of the bargaining last time around. I think we had 2 options regarding mandatory meetings. I would like to present an option for mandatory meetings that would limit any time to those 2 additional meetings to 45 minutes per meeting. I think we had a 30-minute option and an hour meeting, so meet in the middle and limit those meetings to 45 minutes. I believe that is it. I don't know if Ms. French is special instructional is 62.5.
What was the one before that? It has increased pay to 54.5, then you could increase pay to 54.5.
You just said it twice.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
No, that's okay.
that's what we call repeat run.
That's okay.
Sorry. And so kind of just in a nutshell, there's a 7% increase in wages included there, which is cost of about $30 million, somewhere into that neighborhood. Also wanted to mention that I think we have legitimate interest on both sides to include bereavement, parental, and that elimination of the 10-year terminal pay requirement. Just to note, that parental leave language, I think, is unprecedented across the state. We would be the only district in the state of Florida that has parental leave. There are some districts who have maternal leave that they've implemented in 3-week increments, but only for the mother and in cases of natural birth. So we've done some research. We would be precedent setting by establishing parental leave. About 50% of the districts have some bereavement leave, but most of them include that within their sick and personal time. So that language we think is very beneficial to our employees. And I think that's about it in relation to that option.
Any kind of additional explanation, or can I take a mistake?
I don't know. We might have some questions. Would you like to see the proposal probably a good idea to throw up the slide with the compression adjustment. Shay, is that good?
Was that your
That
question?
was my question, yeah.
All right.
Here we go. Want to share that?
So to add a little detail to what Ron just went through, he talked about increasing the amount of time, right? The 9 minutes that would be compensated. Then he talked about increasing the base to either 54.5 or 62.5 if you're special instructional. And the last part of that was compression, adding 4% for compression. And this is the details behind what that looks like in the option. So for each of the years that are listed down the side, and the last one, I'm sorry, is a little cut off, but that's 20 plus, anything 20 plus. Here are the number of years and the percentage or the compression increase that would be related to that, that commensurate number of years. So anywhere between 0, there's nothing additional being added if it's somebody with 0, 1, or 2 years, specifically years L, as we define it in the district, which would be years in district, correct? And then all the way down to years 3 and 4 would be added 1% additional. And then each of the following years, you see how that's listed from anywhere between 4.5% to the last number being 7.5%. I'm sorry that it's a little cut off. And so the interest, as you see, it looks very much like the option that TALC presented. I think it was the last time we got together. We did pare the numbers down some because it was a 4% amount that we were trying to fit into there. But the structure of it resembles what it is that you all were recommending or suggesting in your own option. And then we spoke to the rest of the interest, I think that Ron has already done. And as someone already mentioned, increasing the beginning teacher salary will help recruitment. But it also helps retention as well, because some of the teachers who are already here also receive that same increase for the beginning salary as well. And this addressing of compression means larger percentages are going to those who have been here more, so it helps to alleviate that salary compression. If I may add to that in terms of when you look at the impact, the option in its totality, what its impact is on average across the board, may I speak to that some? So when you look at what the impact is of the totality of the option that Ron just went through across the board, this is what it looks like, and this is related to these people who are here right now. So this is as of a point of time, right? Of course, people leave and come every day, so it looks a little different every day, but this is in effect what the impact is. So if you're talking about a person who is year zero, or that is they might have just walked in the door, they would be receiving on average a 6.9% increase. And as I said, that is on average, because there's a minimum and a maximum band that their number of increase could be anywhere between 2% to something else. But the average increase that someone would see at a year zero is 6.9%. So as you see, it's the impact of this carried through the salary schedule, carried through those years of L. Most of the people on the salary schedule going from years 5 on down are seeing the same or more increase in salary as well, with all of the different options together. So with the issue that Anna was just speaking to in terms of, well, the beginning salary is being increased and others are not getting increased commensurate. With this particular option, for the most part, people are getting increased commensurate. Different from saying, well, everybody gets an additional $1,000 or an additional $2,000, depending on what your salary is, that is a different percentage for each person. But with this option, in terms of how compression is addressed, it really carries out that same percentage across almost the totality of the salary schedule. I saw questions.
Just one more comment before you take, and part of the reason why we, again, presented this in a different way was because the 3% COLA probably would have not done much to address the compression across the board. And so, and based on the feedback and the interest that we had, that's why we adjusted that to look more at compression.
Amy, Anna, and Jay. Who was first? Anna was. Anna's here.
You got the mic over there?
Yeah, so is the mic.
So I just have two things that I would like for you to clarify. The first thing I would like for you to speak on is where it says student achievement is more time and less vacancies help students. If you could define the more time, because I think one of the concerns we have is that adding an additional 9 minutes to the day would, I guess, be controlled is what I would say. And then my second question was on the other slide, where it had numbers of teachers. How do we have like in year 7, for example, it said 252.1 teachers. We have like some hands and arms out there. So like, can you just speak to the point parts of the numbers?
Sure, kind of sort of it is hands and arms, because every person isn't a whole person, right? In terms of the FTE value of a person. This isn't a head count, it's the FTE, number of FTE positions. So if somebody's only employed half-time or 0.2 because they work a day a week, that's what this reflects. So if you want to, make that the equivalent of an arm or a leg or, half versus the other half, then that's what that is. So that's why you see partial pieces in there. Sorry, I could have rounded. It's the accountant in me, I can't do it. So then the other question that you were asking about more time and less vacancies, the reason why we put that on there was because more time, less vacancies does help students. It doesn't necessarily mean in this particular case, more student time. It meant more time for teachers to do all the things that they need to do to be effective. And that's what that statement really meant, more time, just on its face. And Ron, you might want to add to that.
No, I think she covered it.
Okay, and share your rating.
Just a couple of clarification questions. So on year 5, you said they would increase to a 4.5 percentage. Do you know what the average salary is for year 5? Do you have that data?
I'm sorry, no, I don't have it with me for just an average salary for people specifically at year 5.
All right.
Certainly could get it, but I don't have it available now.
All right, I'm just asking because I think if we go up to 54.5, Kerr, I'm looking at you. Is that a 4.5% increase from the base salary, or is it higher than that?
I think it's, well,
It's
the
higher.
operations first.
Yeah, it depends on the order of operations. If we just went from 50,500 to that, I think it almost came out to almost 8%. That's like an 8% increase. But based on the order of operations, then that's why we were able to kind of adjust some of those.
So everybody who is at level 5 would go up to 54.5, and then they'd get 4.5% on top of that?
It really depends on each person, not because when Amy and I were looking at this, so here's the key to some of this too. There's a difference between years years L and years T.
Right.
So people who come in sometimes get credited based on that formula that we use. That's their years T, which they bring to the table. So, because I was trying to figure out, how does somebody at 0 years have a salary of 53.7 or whatever? So it was the credited years that they brought with them. So really it depends on the amount of time that they spend here. Did I answer that?
I'm just,
Yes, I think so, but I think also you were asking, so if I could, you were asking almost like walk through the calculation. So if we're walking through the calculation, if someone makes, and you're looking for someone who makes less than 54.5 now because they're being brought to 54.5.
Right.
So for example, if you make now 50,500, which is our minimum salary, first we're gonna add your time to it, your 45 minutes for the week, and that's gonna bring you to something. It's gonna increase by about $1,000, so it'll bring you to 51.5. Then everyone gets brought, so that happens to everybody, right? You get calculated whatever your new 45 minutes, and you have a new salary based on that new 45 minutes. Then, if that salary is still less than the minimum, 54.5, then you get brought up to that minimum. If it's already more than that, then you don't get necessarily brought up to anything. Everybody gets brought up to at least the minimum. And then, now based on that salary, depending on where you are in this number of years with years L, your additional compression percentage is gonna be based on that salary, right? Your new salary with the new 45 minutes.
all right, that answered that question.
Okay.
My second question was, the other chart, if you could flip back to that for a minute. Yes, thank you. This chart is with the extra minutes added to it, right?
That's right.
Okay, that's it, thank you.
That's right. And then, so with the extra minutes, and with, like I said, this is an average increase, right? Depending on who you are, what you make, and what your circumstances are, there's a band in there, some more, some less, that leads to that average. But if the average of somebody at year 0 is 6.9% increase, so too are almost the rest of the whole entire number of years L. Almost everybody. Either at least that or more, based on the fact that those compression percentages were laid out the way that they were laid out.
All right, Shay.
Yeah, I can see it now, yeah. We'll check it when you're done.
No, that's okay. We're good.
I have another person with a question, so Shay,
Yeah, just move on.
you have a question?
I did, yeah,
No,
Not today.
not at the moment.
no, I do, but that's okay.
Just a question on the special instructional and the increase to 62. What is the cost on that versus the cost of equalizing everyone to the same supplement for special instructional?
I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't answer that right now. I did not
Do you think
compare
we can
just
get that?
specifically or the two. Good.
Heather, please.
My last one is with the chart as far as FTE numbers per person, does that include all of your special instructional in those numbers? And we would expect that your years L would be based off of that.
It did, you're asking, does this include all instructional personnel? It included all instructional personnel that we had at the time of this run, yes, including special.
Okay, so we're using teachers just like in the contract with the asterisk.
Yes, okay, yes. I meant number of instructional personnel probably, I should have said, but it was everybody, yes. My apologies.
Anna?
My question is about the elimination of the career ladder and pay for FY26. It is my understanding that there have been some employees that received communication earlier in, like maybe the end of the summer that they had moved. I didn't fact check that, but I've heard from people. So are we saying that if that person had moved from, one ring of the career ladder to the next, that person would not receive any money this year? Or can you just talk about the elimination of the career ladder? Because I know we talked about changing some stuff, but.
No, I think that, the elimination of the career ladder would not occur till FY27. So anybody who's currently in the system and who's eligible and all of those things are working towards that anybody new, I'm assuming anybody new from that standpoint on, we'd try to rework the career ladder somehow into whatever we decide as a committee to address that.
27. Can you just update the option in a second? It says FY26.
I think the option is,
The payout would be for FY27, like they did pay in FY27, but it would run us through this year, which is FY26. Okay. And so the one that you got emailed, that told you, that's for FY25, their payout before.
Gotcha.
We're always a year behind on that one. Gotcha.
Okay, anybody else have any questions, clarification needed? Kevin? Mike, please.
So I have a series of questions. In the past, have we done years L or years X to determine experience for raises? I thought it's been years X.
Right, so we believe it's been years L. But that's what we have based on this option. If we want to talk about something, then.
All right, I'm gonna have Kerr kind of go back and look.
Yeah, what is your definition of years X?
Years L is how many years I've worked for the school district of Lee County. Years X is how many credible teaching years I have. Me, it's the same because I've never worked anywhere else. But if I worked in Ohio for 10 years and came down and worked here for 5, my L would be 5, but my X would be 15. And so I thought we've always based it on the X number, not the L number when we're talking about raises. Kerr's looking now, actually.
And again, I think my understanding is years T has always just been used to determine where the placement is when they come into the district. That then it kind of slides over to years L, and that the increases have always been based on where you're at. So if you're using D,
Can we have a poster, please?
so I think so I'll just, in simple terms, like the number of years you've taught, regardless of where it's at, where you come in is where you determine where you're placed on the salary schedule. So that's why, people who have 0 or in their first year here are making 53.5. Because I was like, how'd that happen? Well, it's because they probably brought in so many years with them that they were credited. So now that becomes where they're at on the salary schedule, and it's my understanding that we use that placement to determine what the, what the increases were based on that. So, again, if you got a different thought process in that, we just use what we thought was,
We'll trust but verify that one.
Yep.
Second, on the extra minutes, and I have to come back to this over and over again. The survey we did suggested people don't want to do it for money. That says something. But also, by the time this is said and done and over, it will probably be November. Just because, if we agree tonight, it'll take a couple weeks to do it, then we've got to get 10 days, then we've got to vote, then the board's got to vote, then it's all got to be factored in. So it's November. So minimum this takes place the week before Thanksgiving. And with all due respect to our absolute Pollyanna view of the idea that we can pull this off at 100 sites with 100 committees, that really we can't prove that all of them meet to make their calendars now, to me, seems like we're like saying it will happen. And I can't guarantee you with any certainty that the calendar committee met at every school this year to do what they're supposed to do. And I think I had somebody beside me said they didn't. So the idea that we're just gonna trust it and we'll hear about the problems is problematic for me. So I really think the best option to discuss the minutes idea is to engage in that in August. Like start in February and August, where people have the ability to fix their lives and determine whether or not they want to do it. And we can really drill down on what it means. Because honestly, we necessarily sometimes don't always have the same agreement on what planning time means. And so, like, again, I would really like for that, because again, we have an interest in that, right? We have an interest in increasing teacher pay at the starting rate, but we also, so we have the same interest. It's just a matter of how and what and why. So to make a mid-year change for me, based on the feedback I got from my membership, and again, for some reason, if we want to do a whole 97 person survey and we agree on the question, I'm happy with that too. I mean, and we live with the results. But I just have this profound dread and menacing feeling about rolling it out mid-year and the disruption it's going to cause in lives of employees. And I just don't want to be in a position to be fixing that. And because we spend a lot of time fixing problems that we probably could have foreseen had we slowed down. And then there was one more thing, and I don't remember what it was, but I might remember it after Shay's done.
Well, Anna had her hand up. Are you done?
I was just years out.
Okay, then go ahead, Shay.
I want to talk about the special instructional, 62,500. Now, if somebody, because I know special instructional is not hired at that rate right now, so anyone that's lower than that rate, will they be brought to that rate and then given the percent increase based on years in district?
Yes. Yes, it would be the same process that we would use. And again, our current contract language basically has that separation. The starting salary is 50,500 and then it's
5810.
5810. So looked at a similar percentage, may not have gotten it exactly right, but
No, and that's fine. I
in the
just,
current contract language, that seemed appropriate based on that.
no, and that's fine. I just wanted to make sure, I guess my concern was I didn't want someone who was under that 62.5 that's been here for 5 years to be making the same as a person coming in. So that was my thing. So then, when I look at this, adding 4% for compression with approximately 15 million, 16, sorry, I'm blind. Ultimately, though, it's that last chart you put up is what people would be, what the rates would be, right? If I understand correctly?
Those are estimates on the average per that year, you know what I mean? So it's not, it might be a 5% on the average, obviously it's gonna be somewhere near that depending on where you're currently at on your salary.
So if I look at, let's just say year 10, that's 7.6. So 2% of that, first off, would be the additional minutes.
Yes.
And then 5.6 would actually be more or less the compression adjustment.
All right, Do that one again, say that again.
Okay, so I'm looking at 10 years under teacher impact, and it's
Okay.
7.6. So 2% of that would be if we agreed to the extra 9 minutes. Is that right?
That's the teacher impact page was overall, that would include the additional minutes.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So
Right,
approximately
okay.
2% of that
Right,
is the
oh, I
additional
see,
minutes.
2%
and
of
then
that.
5.6 would actually be the compression adjustment.
Could be, yeah, could be. Right,
I don't know, I'm confused and I hear them confused, so I'm just trying to understand. Okay, okay.
I mean, you could, it's just this is just a visual to try to explain what the average increase would be on where you're at. I mean, we could take that away, and we have that for every single person, you know what I mean? Like, that's probably what you're more interested in looking at. It's just a visual to see where you're at.
I just don't want people to take this and say, okay, well, this is what I'm gonna get, when you're saying it's the average. Like, it's very hard to look at a number and be like, oh, okay, this is what I'm gonna get, and then all of a sudden it comes through and that's not what you get.
So typically, and again, I haven't gone through this process, but typically, right before ratification, then every employee gets a letter that says.
So that's never happened. That happened with Spalk last year, yes.
No, I mean, that's why I said I haven't done this with TALC, but typically what we've done with the other groups is we send a letter to each person, each employee with, here's where your years were, here's the increase due to this, here's the increase due to that, this is what your salary would be if you voted to ratify. And that kind of helps, and we've been able to answer a lot of questions. And typically then we open up, for a couple days, maybe through Zoom meetings, if you have questions, then we would try to answer that. Yeah?
So I think I kind of had the same question as Shay, because I'm still a little confused. So when I wrote down the steps, so it was like first bring the 45 minutes a week, right? So that's the 2%, correct? Okay, then bring up the new base. Doesn't apply to me, but check. Then the additional compression. So when I look at that chart and I'm seeing the 7.6, I really have to subtract the 2 out of that. Because that's 7.6 for my year, so is it? See, it's confusing. So I got the 2%. So then when I go to step 3, then the additional compression, the average for 14 years was 7.6. So then I get the 7.6, check, average. So that's really like a 9.6.
No. You have to back out.
Because I said it, you have to subtract the 2%.
You can't do percent that way, you can't add percent, sorry. Yes.
So, I'm just as confused, but I will say you can't add percents. So let's just say my salary is $100, which actually feels that way sometimes. My salary is $100. If I do a 2% increase for 45 minutes a week, now I make $102, right? Now if you're gonna do, let's just say I qualify for 7.5, now you have to take 102 and then multiply it by 1.075 to get your new salary. You can't do, so if the first thing to understand correctly, and you guys on the district team, if it's gonna be 2%, we're gonna take everyone's salary and we're gonna increase 2%. So you get $102. And then whatever your next is, you take, I'll use $100 because it's just easy, and you just multiply that by your next percent. That's what it would be, that's what you're saying. So we're not subtracting or adding percents together. Because if you add the percents together, you would actually make less money by adding 2% and 7.5% than if you raise 2% and do 7.5%.
So I just wanted to make sure on that other slideshow that the percentage, the average percentages for the year increases are separate and the 2% first step bring to 45 minutes a week.
Well, yeah, they're separate and different, right? There's one that shows the compression or the actual percentages to be applied to people's salaries. the last slide that you're referring to says, okay, so at the end of the day, what is the impact to an individual, right? And maybe it would be helpful if we could walk through different scenarios of what people at different years and in different situations and in different kind of work groups would look like in order to make it a little more clear. Because the impact to different people will be different depending on what their circumstances are.
Okay, so that brings me to my next point, is because what every person that listens to all of these proposals do, including all of us, we go, how does this impact me? And we sit there and we go, okay, I'm gonna try to figure out what this increase would look like for me. So one of the things that you just said a minute ago, Ron, when you asked about like each employee would get this is what your raise would be. One of the things I kind of heard you say was they would get that before ratification. And that's something I think we've always kind of tried to get, because I think that's important that people know exactly what they're voting on and how it impacts them so they can make informed decisions. In the past, we've done that very blindly. And I think that is, and then even when you get your updated stuff in PeopleSoft and you're going, wow, okay, I thought I had this figured out, it still doesn't make sense, hopefully I still got it. I think that transparency and that clarity would be very important for our employees.
I can tell you we are 100% committed to doing that. I got some thumbs up.
And we can make that part of the implementation plan.
So I'm looking at the current contract. I'm still stuck on X versus L. Years L is on page 54. That is years with the employer. That's for longevity. So I want to make sure that this years L that we're talking about is actually on page 60, and it's listed as years X, which is, oh wow, just lost it. Credible years of teaching experience. Are we talking the same language, just using the wrong letter? Otherwise, we're counting years with the district for longevity and for salary increases and.
Yeah, we could change that. If you're not, whatever that looks like for whatever, you know what I mean, that, I think that's what we determined, that's what we have right now, so that's how we determine it. I don't know what's happened in the past again, but when we pulled the data, this is, we just took basically where people sit right now. So wherever they sit right now is how they would be, you know what I mean, where they're listed at. So if they're here with the district, go ahead. I mean, I tell me what you want, I guess.
I want to make sure that I'm clear, so when we go caucus and we start talking about things, we're talking about the same thing and we don't come back here with more questions and have to devolve in. But so if I've been working for the school district of Lee County for 10 years and I brought in 5 years of teaching experience from Collier, my years X should be 15. 10 with Lee, 5 from Collier. Is that what that is up there? And my year L would be 10 because I've been with Lee for 10.
There we go. Okay, years L is going to include every year you've worked at the district, regardless in a teaching position, as a para, as a bus driver. Every year you have worked for the district in a regular benefits earning position goes into that years L calculation.
Correct.
Then we have another figure in there that we can use, which is called years T, which is years of creditable teaching experience in the district. And then there's another one, the years X, which is also years D, but that is years of creditable teaching experience both within the district and outside of the district.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help?
Yes, and the years X, which is also years D for reasons I don't understand. I'm looking back FY24, FY23. We've always used years of credible teaching experience for the salary increase calculations.
Okay, all right, fair enough. That, what you're looking at here really is years L. That is what's here as Kirsten just defined it. However, if we're talking about wanting to use a different definition, then certainly we can talk about it. But that's just not what's illustrated here.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to be consistent because if we use years L, why would we have a longevity calculation if I feel like you're rewarding the same thing in twice? Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I don't know.
Okay.
I guess it's a little bit different because the longevity is based on a band of years and automatically are increases that are built into. So this is kind of the method that you use the calculation for, which in my mind is a little bit different. But again, I think if we go back and you want to see what that looks like with years X/D, we can do that.
Yeah, I would like to see that, yeah.
Evan?
I've remembered some of my questions. So I'm just going to assume because it's not listed, it doesn't include it. So this does not include the equalization of the special instructional supplements.
No.
This does not include adding the technical colleges to the special center supplement.
No.
Was there a reason the district was not interested in that?
Kind of like the same long thing, based on the conversations with other folks about that the increase in the starting salary this year, maybe in the future, we can get to that point where we visit the supplements, but no, we did not include that.
Okay, anything else, Kevin? Shay, did you have a question or no? Okay.
I think we need to caucus, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Time?
20.
20?
With my caucus accountability partner here, she will keep us
All right.
on point.
Okay. I know.
She'll do all she can do to raise.
why some people have left the room. There's an executive caucus going on right now. Minutes. Okay, welcome back. I don't know which caucus report to do first. What do you think?
We do ours.
Okay.
So we went through the option at length. We still have more questions, but we figured we could do some discussion out here. We discussed the additional minutes to the day and how that affects annual salaries. And we spent quite a bit of time on some questions around special instructional, which I can get into with the executive level caucus. That was one of the things that necessitated the executive caucus.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, we had a similar conversation about our special instructional, and thankfully we have Lori Brooks on our staff to kind of give us some inside information about what has been done in the past and how that works. And we definitely had the conversation about years X and D as opposed to years L, and certainly believe that years X is something that, you know, we were certainly amenable to putting together, but it would take us some time to put that information together and come back with what that looks like as far as the breakdown.
Okay. And who wants to give the executive caucus report?
I can do that. So we had questions around years X versus years L. I went back 3 or 4 contract negotiations and found that we used years X for salary increases, years L for longevity. The rub here is our special instructional friends, because for one reason or another, over the years, varying rules have governed how much work experience they could bring in. And especially with the move to 47.5 and their salary elevating, a lot of their experience got squished into not being worth anything at all. And so we don't want to agree to something that will disadvantageously affect them. So we discussed maybe allowing them to submit verifiable work experience, something like happened with SPAUC. And so that was the conversation in our caucus, also around adding minutes and a creative solution around that.
Okay. All right. Cover everything? Okay. All right, so where are we going from here now that you have had all those discussions? Kevin?
I think that it's probably best to see what years X does as opposed to years L around these things. I also think, we need to continue to kind of work some priorities as well that maybe aren't on here. So kind of the practical answer to the question is maybe home. Well, because they're not gonna be able to do years X on the fly, right?
No.
I'd rather have it done correctly than done on the fly.
Yeah.
So, and the practical answer is probably home. But again, I think for the 8th, which is our next day, come back and look at what years X looks like. And again, I think talking about how, because I think every employee, even though we're gonna give a piece of paper, I think every employee can kind of figure their hourly rate and do the 45, do the extra time if happened and then the raise on top of that. And then they can kind of do that math as well. So, so I think the practical answer is home. But the greater answer is back on the 8th with new data.
Okay. Yes, Ron.
I just want to remind everyone that we have 10, 12, 22 to deal with, which is the performance salary schedule. And the disparity, last year we just did small amounts, if you recall. 300 and 225, because we have to have that percentage separation. So I just want to remind everyone about that, both sides.
I thought you were talking about
that one
that makes me go to Tallahassee and testify.
No, we're trying to avoid that.
Oh, one of us is, but one of us isn't.
Okay, thank you for that reminder. Anything else? Anna?
Last session at the end, this is option 15, we had discussed, adding staffing specialists so that they are compensated for additional duties, much like the, special instructional teachers are. I don't know if you guys were able to take a look at that, but since we do have a little bit more time between now and then, if that's some information that we can come back with.
Yeah, that may help. Most of the data that I've collected has been anecdotal at best because we don't have a lot of, kind of data. We've never really tracked that to see how many vacancies have been filled. What does that look like now? Another couple of weeks may allow us to do that, but it's kind of hard to determine, what that's been like for us because we just really have never considered them special instructional. We never really figured out what that. So we'll do the best we can to try to gather that.
Any other questions? All right, with that, happy birthday, Shay.
2 times in a row, birthday on the south side.
I know. And enjoy your long weekend, everybody, and we'll see you on the 8th at 4:30. That worked, right? Okay.